are here today with Dr. Leanne Dillard, who is an extension forage specialist with the Alabama Cooperative Extension System. Thank you so much, Dr. Dillard, for joining us today for our horse videos.
Thank you.
Well, I was wondering, could you tell me exactly what is a forage?
So it's quite simple. Forages are basically all the plants that different livestock eat. So in horses, we're going to be talking about pastures and all the species we plant in pastures, as well as hay. And I have some examples of hay here and different types of hay. So basically anything but grain that a horse eats would be forage.
Could you explain to us why we fertilize and what exactly fertilizer is?
So fertilizing is very important in our pastures and our hay fields because basically it's our nutrition for our plants. So when we take a soil sample, what we're doing is we're trying to determine what's in there. When we determine that through a soil test, then we know exactly what kind of nutrients our plants need to eat to become very high yielding as well as nutritious. And it's because whatever is in the plant becomes then in the animal. So whatever nutrition's there allows us to reduce any supplementation for our horse, which is important because supplementation is expensive. So fertilizer are simply a myriad of different things. So they can be something as simple as horse manure, which is we can put on our fields and add nutrients back, recycled through the horse, or commercial fertilizers, which are synthetic. They're man-made nutrients. So all of those are food for our plants, which our plants then become food for our horses.
Okay, so you mentioned a soil test. Can you explain what a soil test is and how you take one?
So a soil test is basically a way that we measure what is existing in our pasture at any given time. So we take those, we use a soil probe, which you'll see here, and we take that soil probe and we push it into the soil about 4 inches. We take off any vegetation that may be on top, any of the grass that may be on top of the soil sample, and then we put it in a bucket. We take it and we take a variety of samples across our field. We usually want to take 10 to 20 samples in a zigzag pattern across our field. We put those in one bucket, we mix them up, and then we put them in this box you'll see here. This box is specific for our Auburn University soil testing lab. So once we put them in the box, we can take this and we take it to the soil testing lab, and what they're going to tell us are 4 major things. The first thing is going to be our soil pH. So pH is a scale from 0 to 14 that tells us either how acidic or alkaline our soils are. Naturally, in most of the state, our soils are acidic, so less than 5. Most grasses and legumes prefer a pH 6 to 7. 7 is neutral. So it tells us how much lime we may need to increase our soil pH. It also tells us nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium needs for our plants. So these are the 3 major nutrients that plants need in order to produce carbohydrates and proteins, which are important for animal nutrition.
So you say fertilizer, when they get back their test, what are they going to be looking for in that test and when they go to the store to buy their fertilizer?
So on your report, when you get that back from Auburn University, it's going to have numbers for N, P, and K. That's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Whether you go to the feed store or you just simply go to Home Depot or Lowe's, all fertilizer is going to have 3 numbers separated by dashes, and they're always going to be in the order of nitrogen or N, P, phosphorus, and K, potassium. So that'll tell you the percentage of what is in that fertilizer mix. So then you're going to take your soil test report, which tells you pounds per acre, and you'll calculate. And you can come to call your county extension agent, and we can help you do those calculations on what it would take to convert the percentage in the bag versus pounds per acre.
How do we know if we have good forage?
So the only true way is to take a test. Now we can look at our hay and our pastures and we can know if they're healthy by how green they are, about how weed-free they are, and about how much material is there. But the only true way is to take a forage test. We can send those to the same lab. It's the AU soil testing lab. They do forage samples as well. And you take a sample and they'll tell you how much of carbohydrates and fiber is in there, how much protein, and how digestible it is. And if you tell them it's for horses, they'll do special calculations to tell you those based on horses instead of versus cattle. Cattle have a different digestive system, so it's going to be a little bit different. So you want to make sure you indicate that it is for horses.
And our last question for today's episode, what is rotational grazing and why is it important?
So that's an excellent question. So rotational grazing is very important for a variety of reasons. So rotational grazing simply means rotating, just like the name says. It's not a tricky name. It really means that. So all you have to do is take your pasture, whether it be 1 acre, 10 acres or more, and split it into smaller subsections. You can do that as easily with some temporary electric fencing, or at some point you can decide to put in permanent fencing. But what you're doing is you're just minimizing the area that your horse has to graze. And this is important, one, because it allows the plants to rest. So plants, just like anything, when they're grazed, they're stressed. So they need a time in which they're not stressed to kind of relax and be more healthy. But two, especially for horses, it's so important because horses are very big selective grazers, which means they'll find an area they really like and overgraze that area, and then they'll find other areas they'll ignore and they'll overgrow and be overly mature. So they don't uniformly graze. So what this does is it gives them less access to be selective and forces them to eat things they may not normally prefer to eat. It's still nutritious, it's still healthy, but they don't prefer to eat it. So it allows to have better uniform grazing. This gives them a more uniform diet, which is really important in terms of maintaining a healthy horse.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Dillard, for joining us today for our first episode of our Horse Club videos. I hope that you'll join us for our next one as well, where we're going to learn more about hay and how to feed that hay. Thanks for joining. See you later. Bye-bye.